Good morning, good afternoon, and possibly good evening, and welcome to our webinar on how to automate financial audit for SAP with KNIME. My name's Darron Walton from DVW Analytics, and I'll be your presenter today. Before we kick into the main presentation, there's just a couple of items of housekeeping I'd like to cover off with you. Firstly, on your Zoom screens there, you should see a Q&A section where you can post any questions. You may notice you've all been gagged, so you can't talk to us directly, but please use the Q&A section to post any questions and upvote any favorite questions if you have them. I have a silent partners on the call, Killian Teal from KNIME, who will leap like a ninja on any questions you may have around KNIME server, and also Ian James from DVW. And Ian is ready to answer any questions you may have around our connectors for KNIME. Okay, this session is being recorded and will be shortly available on YouTube, and there'll be a follow-up email in the next few days with both links to the recording and various downloads. Okay, so hopefully you'll find this useful. So just to highlight, there's a Q&A section there, and you can pop it up and ask any questions, and the guys will be happy to address them for you. Okay. Alrighty, so let's get into the meat of it then. So for the agenda today, you've got six topics. Firstly is how do we go about unlocking access to the SAP data for financial audit with KNIME? Probably the reason we're actually presenting today is because we have an answer to that, and I'll address that for you in just a second. And then we'll look at some specifics. We'll take a look at how do you work with SAP Transactions, T codes, or ABAP reports directly within KNIME. So no running a report via SAP GUI, no having to download data into Excel sheets, do lots of manipulation of data before importing into KNIME. How do we execute those T codes directly within KNIME itself? From an audit perspective, table data in an SAP system gives us the absolute finest level of granularity possible. So I'll show you how we go about accessing table data and utilizing that within KNIME. And the example I'll give you will be pulling data from multiple tables to provide an end result. We'll also take a look at BW Queries. A good number of our customers still running BW. I know still within financial audit, BW Query, BW InfoProviders are commonly used. So we'll show you how we can work with those within the KNIME platform as well, excuse me. And we'll take a look at how we go about automating these processes. All right, so once we've defined how to pull data from T codes and tables and BW queries, how do we then start automating that process? So it can be run either on a scheduled basis, completely hands-off, or where users within your organization can maybe consume the output from a KNIME workflow without actually having any real knowledge of either KNIME or SAP. And finally, just got a one-pager with some resources for you for further reading and follow-up. Okay, so how do we access that data? So the whole point of DVW is that what we really want to do is make it as easy as possible for users of the widest possible range of SAP products to easily get access to and consume that data within KNIME. And to that end, we've developed a number of SAP specific connectors that work within both KNIME server as well as the KNIME Analytics platform. This one page here, I'll give you a snapshot to the main products. I'll focus today as part of the demonstration and the overview of products on our flagship product, which is our KNIME Connector for SAP. And I'll highlight the SAP systems that are relevant to that just now. But also just want to add the fact that we also have capability that works outside of mainstream SAP with solutions such as integrated business planning, the whole range of SAP customer experience solutions, ranging from SAP Cloud for Customer, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, and also Marketing Cloud. In the HR space, we work with SuccessFactors. Okay, but the real meat of what we're going to cover off today is going to be what would traditionally be our core on-premise SAP solutions, right? Both the transactional systems that they're the lifeblood of your businesses, as well as the analytics systems as well. So again, this is really just a partial list. If you run a different SAP system that you don't see here, feel free to reach out after the webinar or ask in the Q&A and we'll validate it for you. But from an audit perspective, there's two main parts to this. I want to get access to the data within my ERP system, and that could be the current iteration of SAP, which the majority of SAP customers are still using today, a product called SAP ECC. Some of you may have already upgraded onto the latest iteration, which is SAP S/4HANA, and some of you may be slight laggards and still using SAP R3. Right, so we support fully SAP ECC, SAP S/4HANA, and later versions of SAP R3. If SAP Business Suite is something that you use or term you use in your organization, the equivalent to R3, ECC, and S4 would be SAP ERP within that particular stack. But we also support all those other components as well, in addition to the 25 plus SAP-based industry solutions, in addition to the analytics, the data warehouses. So these are either good old BW, BW on HANA, or the latest version of BW for HANA. So this is what we're really going to focus on today. And in particular, we'll focus on ECC, S4, and SAP BW. All right. So our products are aligned one-to-one with those offered by KNIME. All right. So for the KNIME Analytics platform, the desktop-based tool, we have our product called the KCS for KNIME Analytics platform. For KNIME Server, when I want to start automating my processes, I want to schedule workflows, I want to define portal apps for broader consumption, then we have our KCS for KNIME Server. All right, so they're the two main products. I'll show you both today working. But before we go further, I just want to highlight some of the capabilities we have so you understand the types of objects that you can access in any of these SAP systems I've referred to. So currently, we offer extensive SAP Read capability, extract capability. So what do we offer here? Number one, key for financial audit, SAP Tables, tables and views, the finest level of granularity available to you in the SAP system. So this is analogous to using within SAP the data browser transactions. It could be a transaction such as SE16, SE16N, or perhaps some Z variant that your customer has developed for you to use. Now, when we talk about tables here, I just want to emphasize that all of our capabilities, when we interact with SAP, we never, ever, ever hit the SAP database directly. Right, we do everything via the application layer. So frankly, we don't care whether you're running an Oracle database, a DB2 database, a SQL database, or a HANA database. We never touch that database directly. And that's important because we work through the application layer, it gives us two key benefits. Benefit number one, it means that the authorization model that's been defined in your SAP system is automatically respected by our software. So your user, your individual user within SAP, you'll have defined authorizations, accesses to certain tables or queries or TE codes. We completely respect that. So you will not be able to access objects that you're not authorized to access within that particular SAP system. Okay. The other thing we do or gain benefit from by working via the application layer is it means that all the other governance and controls embedded into your SAP system are automatically respected. All right. So tables, table views, key kind of capability for our software. Next capability will be accessing those transactions, T codes, ABAP reports, standard or custom. Right. The beauty of the T code access is that I don't have to worry about the additional business logic that's embedded into that transaction. I can consume it directly within KNIME. As an alternative to T codes and reports, we also support the extract of data via the SAP spool. So the SAP spool feels like it's very old school nowadays. It's intended for initially when we used to sort of print a lot of physical output from SAP systems. But when you run a transaction T code in the background in SAP, it writes the output to the SAP spool. And through KNIME, we have the ability to hook into the SAP spool, grab that data and pull it into the KNIME workflow itself. In the BW context, we work with queries and query views. We can give you access to BW InfoProviders directly if you have the authorization to access them. And we support a very wide range of SAP HANA views. So maybe you're running SAP CRM on HANA or ERP on HANA, or actually maybe S/4HANA. We can give you access to those different views as well. Okay, just before I move on, a little snapshot in terms of what's coming down the line. I won't belabor this too much, but getting data from SAP into KNIME is one thing, okay, and that we do very, very well. But we're also going to be launching second half of this year, the ability for you to write data back into SAP from KNIME. All right, and this will open up all sorts of end-to-end process automation possibilities for you. And we're going to use two main techniques for this. The first technology we're going to be using is SAP Bappy, very commonly used within SAP environments to both extract and write data. So we'll be launching, as part of our KNIME connectors, an SAP Bappy capability. And also, we're going to be launching capability around SAP GUI scripting and HTML scripting. Right, so this opens up lots of possibilities, again, for end-to-end automation. The GUI scripting and HTML scripting would be akin to the kind of capabilities you get in products like WindShuttle, Blue Prism, UiPath, these types of tools. But you'll be able to do that all within the KNIME platform itself. That's coming later in the year, and we'll schedule some events closer to the time. Okay. I'll highlight a few of the key important features you want to be aware of. So the software itself, the connector, has a very light footprint. It's installed as a KNIME extension with a little middleware component that sits on your desktop or on your server. Our node will work with all the various other KNIME nodes, apologies, KNIME nodes. So both from an input perspective as well as from an output perspective, okay, which opens up good possibilities. I mentioned earlier about KNIME Server, where we can schedule our workflows. When we extract data from SAP, there's no staging of the data. It's a direct pull from SAP into KNIME. Now, many of you in the call will have quite complex SAP landscapes. Maybe you'll have multiple ECC systems, or maybe an ECC system, an S/4HANA system in different markets, and you'd like to be able to pull data from multiple systems into a single workflow. That we can do with our KNIME connector for SAP. I've already mentioned the fact that we respect the user's SAP authorizations. We also predominantly use standard SAP APIs to enable us to hook into the SAP system and extract data. A lot of our customers today will access data using single sign-on, and we support that fully. And we have users pull in very, very large volumes of data very successfully from the SAP systems into KNIME, and the product is designed for large volumes of data. All right, so hopefully you have a bit of an overview there. So let's start looking at some specifics. Firstly is, how do we work with SAP Transaction Codes in KNIME? Okay, so as I mentioned in the introduction, we provide two key capabilities. The ability to consume transaction code or ABAP report data directly, or to hook into the SAP spool and pull data through there. The T-code and ABAP report capability is definitely more flexible. It allows us to work, as I said, with both standard and bespoke SAP transactions and ABAP reports. We'll also work with transaction and report variants, and I'll show you that during the demonstration. We have the ability, actually in all of our capabilities across KNIME, to preview our data before we actually run the workflows. So we can validate to make sure that the filters we've applied or the settings we made look right, the data, we can eyeball that data before we really start utilizing it within the workflow. We can also define which specific fields, even with a T-code, that we want to extract into KNIME. And we have a splits function that's applicable across all our capabilities, that where we're maybe executing a T-code or later a table with very large volumes of data in it, we can use this split function to chunk that request up into small manageable chunks. From a user's perspective, when you actually execute the workflow, it's just one request you're making. But behind the scenes, we make multiple requests to that SAP system. We grab all that data together and then present it to you in a nice, clean format within KNIME. Okay, so let's look at a sort of a scenario here, and I'll show you this in the system in just a second. So the vendor line item display transaction, very common use within finance, tax, and audit. Lots of data usually lurking within this particular transaction. The T code is FBL1N. On the left-hand side here, a lot of you are already familiar with this. This is the selection screen for that particular transaction code. I can then enter manually my selection criteria, or I can enter selection criteria and save them as a variant for use later. All right. When I run the transaction, I get an output that looks a little like this. Now that output is okay on screen. It's okay on screen, but if I want to do something useful with it, some work needs to take place. Yeah, so this one here, for example, I've got quite a few fields lurking in this kind of a header area, but now these little tables where I actually have the line item data I'm interested in itself. I have some subtotal type of data here, and then it repeats, okay, down through the report as we look at different, in this case, different vendors. What if I could get that data very simply and cleanly into a format where it can be immediately consumed downstream within a KNIME workflow? Right, so this is what we want to show you. So let me come to my KNIME system. All right, and I'm going to create a new workflow here. Let's just create a new workflow and let's give this a name, FBL1N. All right, so once you've installed our nodes, you'll see the node appearing down here. It's the KCS SAP executor, and I'm just going to drag this into the workflow area. And what I want to do is I want to configure this particular executor. So I tell it, okay, which of the capabilities am I going to use? In this case, it'll be a T code. In which case, which T code, and so on and so forth. So if I just click on this configure workflow button here, you'll see the main configuration screen. Now, this is just details about my particular license. I use this drop down here to choose the particular capability they want to use within this part of the workflow. So you can see here we have BW Read for queries, query views and InfoProviders. We have Read hierarchy for the hierarchies associated with BW queries. We have the table data read, self-explanatory, the T code about report read, which I'll show you just now. Then the spool read, and then some of our other capabilities for success factors, S/4HANA Cloud, Business by Design, Cloud for Customer, Integrated Planning, Business Planning, and Marketing Cloud. All right, so let's look at the T code. So I've chosen the capability I'm going to use. The next thing I need to do also is just choose which of the SAP systems that I have access to that I want to work with. So you can see here I've got quite a list of systems. I'm going to use this ECC system here. And I'll just ping that system to make sure I get some connectivity to it. Okay, I think we're okay there, hopefully. All right, so what I need to do now is just tell the system which particular transaction code I want to work with. Okay, and it's connected to the SAP system that I'm talking to. And what it's done is it's found the underlying report. Okay, so all transaction code is a shortcut to a particular report or ABAP program in the SAP system. So it's gone away and found that for me. My system seems quite slow at the moment for some reason. Let's just give it a second or two. Classic live demo scenario. Okay, let me just come out of this one. I'll come back to that in just a second. I'll come back to this one, guys, see if the system comes back in the next couple of minutes or so. Sorry about that. I'll try to come back to it. Okay, so let's move on. Hopefully the next system won't let me down. Let's look at the table data. All right, so the table data read capability. We can work here with a whole range of different types of SAP tables: transparent, pooled, clustered, SAP views, as well as SAP HANA views. When you define or select a particular table, we retrieve all the metadata associated with that table from the underlying SAP system. So this includes all the fields along with any custom fields. We'll have the ability to select the specific fields to be extracted. We can control the number of records that we want to extract. We can apply filters, including what we call a dynamic filter, and I'll show you what I mean by this in just a minute. And also, again, we can make use of this splits function to optimize the extract of very, very large volumes of data. So if we consider this, on the left-hand side of the screen here, we have a T code. Okay, this is the display display GL document transaction code, FB03. Now, all transactions in SAP follow a document structure. There's header data and there's item data. And on the screen here, I've highlighted the two big boxes. So this box here represents the header level data. Okay, and in SAP systems, the big kahuna, the big table is BKPF, the accounting document header table. This is a view of that table within the data browser transaction in SAP. This bottom box here represents the items, the actual individual financial postings. Okay, and that data is stored in the accounting document segment table, a table called BSEG. Now there are obviously more tables, but these are the big two. Right? If I can extract data from both of those tables, then effectively I can reconstruct the financial accounting document within KNIME. Right? And because I'm using table data, I'm not restricted by what a T code will give me. Okay, it'll give me just that data that I need. So what is this going to look like? So I'll show you this workflow just now. I did actually pre-run it just in case the systems didn't quite work for me. Okay, so here we have a workflow that will give us the idea of what's going on here. So I've got two of our executor nodes on this particular workflow. This first one, if I just go into it, all right, is making use of our SAP Table Data Read capability. We've previously selected the SAP table that we want to work with. Okay, here's BKPF, and we have a search function so we can freely search for those tables in the SAP system. Once I selected it, it retrieved the metadata associated with that table for me. So you can see here we distinguish between the key fields and the data fields. We also highlight where any secondary indexes exist for that particular table in SAP. And the index is important because if you apply filters that meet or match those particular indexes, it gives you very optimum extract performance. Right? I've selected the fields that I'm interested in my particular output. And here I've just applied a very simple filter on a fiscal year. Yeah? And we can do this either by typing in our requirements directly into the screen, or where drop downs exist in SAP, we can go to those drop downs and retrieve those as well. So it becomes a very efficient way of pulling data. Right. So this node you can see is already run, but if I just look at the data output from this, you can see, you recognize maybe here's my company code, my document number, my fiscal year, and certain fields I'm sure many of you will be familiar with from usage in the SAP systems. So in the first part of this workflow then, I've extracted the key table data that I'm interested in for a particular workflow. Right, now, I've then got two branches in this particular workflow. Because I want to do is, again, as I come back to the point I made earlier, I want to effectively reconstruct those financial accounting documents, but at the table level. So the first branch in this workflow is going across to this, this KNIME joiner node. And then this second branch of the workflow is basically it's preparing the data for me to feed into this second executor, which is grabbing data from the BSEG table. So what's the implication of this? What this means then is if I want to be pulling data from SAP tables, I can do that freely with these executor nodes. But I don't have to pull all the data from these tables and then do the cleanup and sort of the data within KNIME. I'm through this particular workflow channel here, I'm selectively or dynamically extracting data from the item level table based upon the data extracted from the header level table. And this provides us with a really efficient way of pulling data from the underlying SAP systems. Now, a lot of you guys will know KNIME better than I do, so maybe this could be tidied up a little bit. Maybe I could do this with simpler KNIME nodes. But it basically gets the data into a state where I can feed it as requests into my other executor node here. So when I come and look at the output from this executor node, sorry, I can see here that I've got document numbers, item numbers, and if I scroll further to the right, you'll start recognizing some values, okay, the kind of values you'd expect to see. Through the joiner, I'm just using a simple join on the shared keys between my header table, the BKPF table, and the BSEG table, the item level table, all right, to filter that data. So when I look at the output from this join table, I then get row by row the output. So the first part of the output here is the data from the header level table. The second part of the output is the associated data from the item level table. So this gives me immense power, yeah, within KNIME using the SAP data. And we have customers pull in tens, if not hundreds of millions of rows of data very efficiently from their SAP systems into platforms like KNIME. Okay. Now the basic pattern here, I've shown one here for finance, but this basic pattern can be applied to other areas of SAP. Yeah, it'd work equally well in sales and distribution, maybe sales order documents. Right, the sales order has multiple different tables to it, different levels to it. So I'd have more of these executor nodes on my workflow, but each feeding data in and the output being selected based upon the data we're providing into it. Sales, finance, procurement, logistics really is quite a common type of theme. This particular workflow we've loaded onto the KNIME Hub. So it's freely downloadable. You will need access to our software in order to be able to make use of it. But we see this as a good template, a starting point for a lot of your table-based workflows in the finance space. Okay, all right. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what's possible here. What about BW? Okay, so although we're seeing an increasing number of SAP customers moving away from BW, it's likely that you're using BW within your organizations. It's likely that there's a good amount of IP built into the queries within those BW systems that you would like to have access to. So we have two main capabilities within our KNIME Connector. Firstly is a plain BW Read. So this allows us to pull data from BW Queries or BW Query Views. We can execute and support a whole range of different types of info provider. We've listed some of them here: info cubes, multi-providers, composite providers, and so on and so forth. The same capability can allow us to access data from SAP HANA views like calculation views or attribute views. We can also apply filters, including this dynamic filter concept to the data we extract. And again, like all our capabilities, we have this splits function. So if we have an absolutely massive report that takes hours to run, we can chunk it up, make smaller requests of data, and then aggregate that data together and then present it to you within KNIME directly. The other key capability is our ability to pull BW hierarchy data from the associated query and present that hierarchy to you in a nice flat tabular format ready for you to consume within KNIME. Okay, so if we look at a query here, you can see in a snapshot of rows and characteristics and key figures and so on and so forth. So this is patently not ready for us to consume within KNIME. What we want to get to is a point where we can have that data directly usable within KNIME to get an output, something like this. So let's show this live. Fingers crossed this system is still up. Right, let's come into KNIME here and let's create a new workflow. Okay, all right, so again, here comes my SAP executor node, and we're going to configure this. This time I'm going to choose SAP BW Read, and I'll use a different system. I'll use our DVW BW system. Let's just ping that quickly. Good, that's working nicely. Okay, so let's come to the meat of this now, right? So first thing I need to do is identify, in this case, the query that I want to work with. All right, so we have different views of the data. If you use BEX, this will be very familiar to you, or Analytics for Office. I'm going to choose one of the queries that I've used recently, my recent history. Okay, you can see all the technical details about the query there. Let's retrieve that data. We're now retrieving all the metadata associated with that query into KNIME. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So there's a couple of things to note. Firstly, let's just add the technical names as well. Okay, so all the characteristics associated with the query, along with all the key figures associated with the query, are retrieved. Based upon the definition of the query in the BW system, various characteristics have been automatically selected. Now, the beauty of this here, is that I'm also able to take control over how I'm going to execute this query from within KNIME. So maybe the standard query definition doesn't include header number or item number or object type, but I want to include it within my KNIME workflow. I'm free to do so just by selecting it. It doesn't change anything in BW. It just allows me to take more control over how the query will be consumed within KNIME. Okay. What you'll also see is you'll make available to you the various attributes, as well as any hierarchies as part of that query. Okay. And we can apply filters to these. I'll show you how we treat hierarchies shortly. All right. Now, this particular query has some mandatory filters I need to apply to it. So they're presented to me here in this kind of reddy orange color. One of those is for transaction type, and the other is for calendar year. So for transaction type, let me create a filter item. So listen, okay, I'll create the filter, but let's see what options I have. So these are the transaction types I have available. And we provide all the usual kind of operators. So include, exclude, equal to, greater than, less than or equal to, and so on and so forth. We also have a really nice feature called inList, which I'll show you just now. The inList allows me to cherry pick exactly which entries I want to include within my particular query extract. Right? For my purposes, I'm going to choose them all here. What you'll also see on these particular screens is this little innocuous box called split. Little box, but very powerful. If I check this, what will happen is that the system will make multiple requests of or multiple executions of the query. It'll say, okay, based upon calendar year and a transaction type ZISC, retrieve all the data. Then I'll go again and say, okay, based upon the calendar year and transaction type WECO, retrieve all the data. From your perspective, once you run the workflow, that's invisible to you, but you're enabling the system to do this behind the scenes for you. Let me just select that one there. And I'm just going to enter directly. Actually, I'll just do a double click here. Fiscal year. So you can see these can be also filled in directly within the screen here. Okay, great. So it's all green now. The system's happy. I've applied the filters and variables that are required. I could add others as well if I wanted to. Let's just preview that data. So we're just going to do an extract. We can sort of see now, here we go. Look, this is the kind of the output. It looks kind of right. It's based upon calendar year 2012. The transaction types look like they match my filter criteria, and it looks quite complete. So this isn't the extract. This is just a preview of what the data will look like once I start working with it within KNIME. Okay, so let's just close this little window now and come back into KNIME. And if I just run this, at this point here, now I'm actually executing the query proper. Okay, and I can see the data that I selected ready to work with within KNIME. Okay, nice and simple. All right, so a couple other things just to point out maybe within that configuration. All right, so we looked at the available fields, the characteristics and key figures. We looked a little bit about the filters and variables and our ability to preview the data. We also allow you to work with various currency settings that may be applicable to that particular query. You can control the output in a similar way as you can do in SAP BW. All right, and I'll come to hierarchies in just now. So there's a lot of capability baked into this particular tool. All right, let's take a look at hierarchies then. Let's configure this particular one. So this time around, I'm interested in the BW Read hierarchy capability. I'm going to go to the same SAP BW system. Let's just ping it, make sure it's talking to me. Good. And what I need to do here is find the same query I worked with in the previous settings. And I'm just going to apply the same filters here, but let me just choose one thing here, which is important, which I want to show you, is under the product, we have these various hierarchies that are available. I'll just switch to the text and key options so we can see the names of those. So there's a bunch of hierarchies that are relevant to this particular product within this query. And I could extract data from multiple of them. I'll just choose this one called the unbalanced hierarchy, because it's quite an interesting one to look at. I still need to fill the filters and variables here. So let's just pop in my calendar year. And I'll choose my transaction types. Let's choose the in list. Select those. Okay, so that's all hunky-dory. And if I now preview this, now you can see we're going to extract the hierarchy data, the associated hierarchy data. Okay. Alrighty. So here I have the individual data. We have the hierarchy data. At the bottom level, we have what's called a leaf node, which we always provide. And the leaf node represents the bottom level of any given hierarchy. The meaning will change according to the context of the particular hierarchy itself. Okay, this is a product, therefore this leaf node represents product. Let's just save that. Okay. So if I then just run this particular node, I can see the data that's been extracted. Again, ready for use within my audit function. All right. And then the other thing I'd need to do here maybe was just use a joiner node. Yeah. To link these two data types together. Okay. All right. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how we can access easily that SAP BW query data, that we can really refine the standard queries that maybe you may have been assigned to work with. We can apply the filters. We can apply filters to various attributes. We can control the hierarchy data that we're going to extract and include as part of our particular workflow. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the KNIME server then. So I'll come back to the T codes in a second. Hopefully one of the systems will be back up again. I may crash and burn, but just bear with me. So I can get access to the SAP data easily, right? KNIME offers massive amounts of flexibility in terms of how I then manipulate and analyze and work with that particular data. Right? And there's a session just a month or so ago that KNIME held focused specifically on audit and the various use cases for audit. What we're trying to show you here is how you can get easy access to the SAP data in order to audit it within KNIME. Ultimately, you're probably going to want to automate these processes. Ultimately, you want to make some of these KNIME workflows available as apps to other members of your organization. Maybe you guys will actually never build the workflows themselves. Maybe you'll just be the consumers of the output from those particular workflows. So with KNIME Server, we have a lot of strong capabilities. So within KNIME Analytics platform, the desktop-based tool that I've been showing you so far, we have the KCS installed for that respective product. On your KNIME server, we'll have the KCS for KNIME Server installed. So I will be building and testing those workflows on the KNIME Analytics platform. Okay, and that may be my endpoint. That may be good enough, right? But not for automation. want to start automating, then I want to publish those to the KNIME server. On KNIME server, I can start scheduling them, or as I said earlier, we can define various web portal applications for consumption by a broader audience. When the workflow is executed on KNIME server, and this could be ad hoc or it could be based on a specific schedule, the workflow then start communicating with the SAP system. Based upon the settings, you define the data you want, the manipulations, etc. So in our case, we'll be requesting the data from the SAP system and pulling that data into the KNIME workflow for you. From there, what you do with it, and the sky's kind of the limit. We have scenarios whereby maybe a particular procurement value, maybe on some purchase orders with a team, has raised a flag, and we want to send an email alert to the responsible people to let them say, listen, something's happening here. This is the data. Go take a closer look at it. Or perhaps we'll do some of the analytics, maybe within KNIME itself, or probably using tools such as Power BI or Tableau for those visualization capabilities. Or maybe you want to push data into another database or something else. Okay, so we've got an example here of the world's simplest workflow. I'm slightly trepidatious that our system is not going to work. So let me just come to a workflow that has just run. So this is the vendor line item display transaction that I've shown you earlier. We've done the minimum required just to get some output onto this. There's lots of capabilities from the tool perspective and how you present the data to your users. But you can see here now a workflow has been run on the KNIME server. This is done based upon ad hoc demand rather than scheduled. I get the output, and then I have the ability to download that output into various different formats. Okay, there's various formatting capabilities within here. We could do graphics and various other analytics and present it to the user. I just elected to do a very straightforward tabular extract, so you can see it working. Okay, so just indulge me for 1 second, please. Just we'll see if that other system's come back at all. Okay, looks like it might have done. Okay, so before progressing, let's just go back a few slides. Let's come back to our transaction code data. Okay, so let's go back into KNIME and try this one more time. All right, so let's see here. I want to drag my executor onto the canvas. Let's try to configure this quickly. I'll use the T code. I want to use the ECC system here. Let's just ping it. Doesn't want to play ball, I think. Let's try one more time. Sorry guys, I won't keep you. No, okay. All right, let's not labor that. We'll have to run in maybe another session to show people later how that part works. Okay, but in essence, I was trying to show you, and apologies for failing miserably in this instance to do so. I'll blame the SAP system for that, is converting the content from a transaction code directly into something that we can consume here. Okay, right. So let's take a look then. Last slide. I realize I've lost some time with the T code, so apologies, I couldn't show you that. But some useful resources, hopefully, for you to see and follow up on. Firstly, our website. If you come to the DVW Analytics website and check out the KNIME Connectors page, I'll give you more information about the core connectors that work for success factors, the connectors that work for integrated business planning, and so on and so forth. You're welcome, and would really like you to come and register for a trial of the software. We'll help you get connected to SAP systems and show you how to use the capabilities to the fullest. We have a blog, and we're starting to build out quite a lot of content now in the KNIME space, which hopefully will be useful to you. And we also have some workflows starting to appear on the KNIME Hub. And again, you can use these as templates with starting points for the data for you to use within your audit particular processes. Specific blogs that could be useful are the ones that relate to the extract of the general ledger data, as well as the sales and purchasing tax data. They walk through the process of creating the necessary workflow and settings within KNIME to make it work, along with a little shortcut here for our various finance and controlling tables, the main tables that you need to use if you're going to be using your SAP data for financial audit within the system there. Okay, folks, I think I'm done. Apologies that the T code didn't work properly, as the SAP system seemed to go down at the most inopportune time for me to demo that to you. But if you do have any questions, please feel to add them to the chat or follow up with us afterwards. I know the email that'll be going out with the source material and various links will give you my contact details there. So thank you for your attention. And unless there's any other questions, I'll give it a minute and then I'll close the call. Okay, radio silence everywhere. Thank you everyone for attending. I hope you found it useful. As I say, feel free to contact us if you have any other questions.